Hi, I'm Peter for Clemco Industries, the company who made your Apollo supplied air respirator. It's my guess your boss bought you a new Apollo and wants to make sure you know how to use it and take care of it. But before I get into that, let's quickly review a few things you should know about the personal protective equipment you need for abrasive blasting. Whatever a job calls for personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, your employer is required to perform what is called a job hazard analysis. There are numerous hazards associated with abrasive blasting, both the obvious, such as rebound, tripping, falling, and crushing hazards, and the not so obvious, like the toxics associated with blasting material and the material you are removing. You have the right to see the job hazard analysis, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, requires you to understand and follow it. So what is the most basic personal protective equipment required for abrasive blasting? It includes the following: a comfort vest worn beneath the suit to warm or cool you in an uncomfortable working environment, steel-toed boots, work clothing like this Clemco blast suit to protect you from abrasive rebound and hazardous substances like lead dust or hexavalent chromium, leather gloves, and most important, respiratory, hard hat, face and eye protection provided by your NIOSH-approved abrasive blasting supplied air Apollo helmet. The last piece of PPE I want to mention is hearing protection. Varying noise levels are present in the blast zone, and many abrasive blasting operations can exceed 120 decibels. Noise at this level can severely harm your hearing in a short period of time. While this video is not intended to be part of an OSHA-required hearing conservation program, Clemco strongly recommends you wear in-ear foam earplugs in conjunction with the Apollo supplied air respirator. Many quality earplugs offer a noise reduction rating of 35 decibels, providing your primary method of hearing protection. In addition, Apollo helmets are the only supplied air respirators approved for blasting that offer a noise reduction rating of at least 8 decibels. So wearing quality earplugs with your Apollo helmet gives you an even greater measure of safety. Now let's talk about the safe use and proper maintenance of your Clemco Apollo helmet. Clemco manufactures Apollo supplied air respirators, commonly called helmets. And while we'll be using the Apollo 600 model for this demonstration, you can use this video as a guide for the safe use of any Apollo helmet. There are some differences in the components or the assembly, but you'll understand what you need to know to use it safely. This Apollo helmet provides not only respiratory protection, but also carries an approval for hard hat, face and eye protection, and a noise reduction rating of at least 8 decibels. The American National Standards Institute, ANSI, tests and certifies products to certain safety standards. Any respirator certified as hard hat protection carries an ANSI Z89 certification. Respirators approved for face and eye protection carry an ANSI Z87 certification. Noise reduction ratings are tested to ANSI S3.19. These documented tests are available on our website. Clemco helmets come in cartons like this. The blackened box next to the stock number and description indicates what's inside. This carton contains an Apollo 600 with a DLX Comfort Fit suspension and a Clemcool air conditioner. The Apollo 600 comes with either a web-style suspension, which I will discuss later, or a DLX padded-style suspension. Everything inside the box is approved as a system by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, or NIOSH. The NIOSH approval means whenever parts are replaced, they must be replaced with genuine parts offered by the manufacturer, the company that was granted the approval. Using genuine parts maintains the NIOSH approval and complies with OSHA's respiratory regulations. Now let's see what's included in a NIOSH-approved Apollo respirator system. First, there is a warranty registration card. It's a good idea to fill it out and mail it in. In fact, Clemco pays postage and maintains your card on file, so there's a record of your purchase. There's also an Apollo respirator inspection card you can use to assure compliance with the OSHA respiratory standard. Copies of this card can be downloaded from Clemco's website. Next, you'll find the owner's manual, a critically important document. OSHA requires your employer to make sure you read and fully understand this manual before you use this respirator. I won't read it here, but I do want to mention that the manual thoroughly covers setup, use, repair, and maintenance, along with lots of safety advice. So before you put on the respirator, read the manual. Ask your employer questions about anything you don't understand, and make sure to watch this video in its entirety. You should also know that Clemco has a full-time safety department to answer your questions. You'll find our contact information at the end of this video. Remember, if you don't comply with OSHA regulations, your company's safety program, and this manual, you can expose yourself to serious harm or death. Maybe not right away, but long after you've retired from blasting. So be sure to listen carefully. Okay, let's take a look inside the box. First, don't throw away the plastic bag, save it for respirator storage. That's important. After you clean the respirator, you can keep it in a sanitary condition by putting it back in the plastic bag. Of course, many employers provide storage lockers or other areas of safekeeping to help you maintain a clean helmet. Now, let's look at the outside of the helmet. Looking at the outside of the helmet, the first thing you'll notice is the warning on the window frame. Read it, understand it, and take appropriate action based on this warning. You'll also see the ANSI certifications for hard hat protection, as evidenced by the Z89 sticker and face and eye protection by the Z87 stamp, as I mentioned earlier. Also notice the strap on the back of the helmet for hanging it up when it's not in use. One of the most common reasons for premature wear and damage is poor treatment, so don't throw it on the ground or carry it by the breathing hose. Take care and use the strap for hanging and carrying the helmet. Now let's look at the cape and collar. A warning on the outside of the cape tells you to read the label sewn on the inside. This label informs you about the requirements for Grade D air, using a carbon monoxide monitor, and about the limitations of uses for this type of respirator. It tells you about the OSHA and NIOSH requirements for respirator use and includes warnings for use of hearing, eye, and head protection. The large table shows the regulator pressure settings for different types of Apollo helmets, air control valves, and air supply hoses. We will go through this information in detail later on. Now let's look inside the helmet. To remove the cape, simply push the release lever on the buckle and pull on the strap. Both the cape and the collar are machine washable. Inside the helmet, we see a cushioned system of pads that Clemco calls the DLX Comfort Fit suspension. The most common size side pad is already installed, but Clemco also includes a thicker side pad for operators who need it. So if the helmet does not fit snugly, simply remove the original side pad and install the thicker one. A snug fit is more comfortable and keeps the helmet in place, making sure it moves with the operator's head. All of the pads are removable and should be washed with mild soap and water. Clemco also offers a more traditional web-style suspension, so choosing between the two is simply a matter of personal taste. As with all supplied air respirators, always use the chin strap to maintain the APF 1000 rating. The Clemco Apollo 20 supplied air respirator comes with a DLX Comfort Fit suspension already installed, but Clemco also provides a free web-style suspension for those who prefer it. Finally, the APF 1000 rating is an assigned protection factor, or APF, that OSHA provides when the manufacturer of a loose-fitting supplied air respirator provides proof that an independent lab has tested it and found it performs at 1,000 times the permissible exposure limit, or PEL. Your employer should know what inhalation hazards exist in your workplace and their associated permissible exposure limits. For your protection, you need to recognize these hazards too. Next, let's look at the Apollo lens system. Replacement lenses manufactured by Clemco are the only lenses approved by NIOSH for use with the Apollo helmet. The use of cloned, pirated, or aftermarket lenses violates OSHA regulations and the NIOSH approval. The system consists of three different lenses: an outer lens, called a tear-off lens, an intermediate lens, and a fixed-in-place but replaceable inner lens. These lenses are specifically engineered to fit the Apollo helmet and protect the wearer. All the lenses are replaceable. The outermost tear-off lenses come in packs of 25. You install them 3 at a time and tear them off one by one during the abrasive blasting operation as they become frosted and impair your vision. When the third tear-off lens becomes frosted, stop blasting and replace them to protect both the intermediate lens and inner lens below. Now, here's a tip that can save you time and trouble. If you install the tear-offs so the tabs on the outermost 2 lenses are outside the window frame and keep the tab on the innermost tear-off behind the frame, you'll know you've reached the last one when there are no more tabs to tear off. Tear-off lenses are easily removed with a gloved hand while blasting. Pull the first 2 tabs as needed and keep working until the third lens becomes frosted. Then stop working. Remove the third tear-off lens and replace it with 3 new tear-off lenses. To replace the lenses, open the window frame and, assuming you followed my tip, remove the intermediate lens and the last frosted tear-off lens. Then simply add 3 new tear-off lenses over the post on the hinged window. Notice the lens has round holes on one side and slotted holes on the other side. The round holes go on the studs closest to the window frame hinge, and the slotted holes are pushed onto the outer studs so the lens can move as the window frame moves. Make sure the tabs on the 2 outermost tear-off lenses are pushed outside the window frame, and the tab of the third stays behind. Once the tear-off lenses are in place, push the single intermediate lens onto the same 4 plastic studs, locating the holes and slots in the same way. In normal operation, you should check the condition of the intermediate lens. If it's not frosted, use it again. Also, always use an intermediate lens as it supports the tear-off lenses and completes the lens system seal to protect the inner lens. The fixed inner lens is marked with Clemco's certification of ANSI Z87 face protection. Illegitimate cloned fixed inner lenses will not carry this important safety stamp. If you frost all the lenses, you'll need to replace the fixed inner lens. To get started, pull down on the gasket and push out the damaged inner lens. Then inspect the gasket for damage or contamination. Remember, dirt and grit or nicks and cuts allow contaminants to leak into the helmet, so be sure to clean the gasket properly or replace it if needed. If the gasket needs to be replaced, grasp it tightly and pull it off. To install the new gasket, align the notch in the gasket with the tab in the center of the window opening. Start at the bottom and work your way around, pushing the gasket groove onto the helmet ridge. You should be able to feel the gasket snap into place. Make sure the gasket is fully seated before you install the inner lens. Of course, if the old gasket is clean and in good shape, you can skip this step. Insert the new lens into one side of the window gasket and then the other. Very gently lift the outer top edge of the gasket with your finger to ease the lens into place. Run your finger on the center of the top and bottom until the lens pops into place. The other way to install the inner lens is to insert the new lens into the gasket first and replace them as a unit. You'll find the method that works best for you. The gasket and lens form a tight seal around the window to keep dust and abrasive out. Now let's inspect the cape and collar. To get started, unzip the collar to inspect it for wear. The collar can be machine washed, but when the elastic wears and it no longer fits tightly to your neck, it must be replaced. A snug fit maintains the NIOSH and APF 1000 certifications. On the Apollo 600, simply re-zip the collar into place just as you would a normal zipper. To reinstall the cape, make sure the collar is in place and push the collar into the cape. Locate the Clemco patch at the front of the helmet, then slip the cape retaining spring cord over the bottom helmet ridge. Make sure the cape retaining spring cord slips over the first ridge without going over the second. With the window frame still open, slip the cape attachment band over both ridges on the bottom of the helmet, locating the buckle on the hinge side of the window frame. Insert the strap into the buckle and ratchet to tighten. Make sure the band slides under the window frame lip. Don't over-tighten the band. On the Apollo 20 supplied air respirator, the collar is sewn directly onto the cape, so both the collar and cape must be replaced if one or the other becomes damaged or worn. To remove the cape, separate the Velcro tabs keeping the cape attachment strap in place. Then slide the end of the cape in one direction to the notch. Continue sliding the cape out of the groove in the strap until the cape is detached. To make it easier to reinstall a new cape, spray a non-toxic silicone-based lubricant into the groove if needed. Then separate the Velcro tabs and, beginning at the notch, slide one end into the groove in the strap. Continue sliding the cape into the groove. When finished, simply close the Velcro tabs. To install the breathing tube, check the arrow on the label, which shows the correct airflow direction. Make sure it shows the airflow moving toward the helmet inlet. The tube has a clamped end and a molded-on end with a swivel fitting. Screw the clamped end onto the replaceable inlet fitting on the back of the helmet. Attach the breathing tube hand tight. The labeled molded-on end with the swivel fitting attaches to the air control device. Apollo respirators come in a variety of models to suit different applications and user preferences. Most of the components we've covered up to now are the same on all models. Key model differences include an adjustable web-type suspension versus the Comfort Fit DLX suspension, and the fitting and hoses for the high-pressure compressed air HP models versus the low-pressure models that use low-pressure ambient air pumps for breathing air. The helmet is the same for both models, just the dimensions of the air control devices and hoses differ. Also, the various optional air control or air conditioning devices are for use with the HP or high-pressure model only. The low-pressure model uses a fixed air volume device called a constant flow connector. The 5 air control or air conditioning devices for the high-pressure respirators are the constant flow connector, the air control valve, the Clemco, the cool air tube, and the climate control tube. Each of these devices provides unique features. All 5 high-pressure air control devices come with a 3/8-inch hose to a 1/4-inch brass pipe adapter and quick connect coupling. To install this connector, wrench tighten the 3/8-inch hose fitting into the yellow 3/8-inch hose. Then wrench tighten the quick disconnect onto the 1/4-inch pipe fitting side of the adapter. To install the constant flow connector, simply hand tighten it onto the labeled end of the breathing tube. The constant flow connector is then attached to the quick disconnect fitting. This valve provides a non-adjustable stream of air to the helmet. To install the air control valve, simply hand tighten the top onto the breathing air tube and attach it to the quick connect fitting, which is attached to the yellow air hose. The air control valve allows the operator to adjust the volume of airflow into the helmet, but not the temperature, by turning the adjusting valve. Both the cool air tube and Clemco provide superior air-cooled breathing air to the operator during the blasting operation. You control the cool air tube with the knob on the bottom of the tube. This model has replaceable interior parts, which allow you to repair it when the internal parts wear out. An alternate cooling device is the Clemco, also controlled with a knob at the bottom of the tube. This model provides the same superior cooling, but it is not serviceable. So choosing between them is a matter of customer preference as they perform equally well. Lastly, Clemco offers the climate control tube to warm or cool your breathing air, depending upon your need. Simply slide the lever on top of the tube to control the air temperature. All 3 temperature control tubes for the Apollo HP models use heat shields to protect the user from the heat or cold generated by the valve. This shield should be worn at all times when using any of the temperature control tubes. Finally, Apollo low-pressure respirators, called LP models, use the low-pressure version of the constant flow connector. Connect this valve the same way. The difference is that the low-pressure respirators use a 1/2-inch ID black air supply line with the quick disconnect already installed. Air supply hoses are the only NIOSH-approved components of the Apollo respirator not included with every helmet, because you may not need to replace the hoses at the same time or on the same schedule as the respirator. These air supply lines undergo stringent NIOSH testing and are the only air supply hoses OSHA allows you to use with the Apollo series respirators. The writing on the outside of the hose indicates they are NIOSH approved Clemco hoses. Yellow high-pressure hoses come in 25, 50, and 100-foot sections, and black low-pressure hoses come in 50 and 100-foot sections. All air control devices require you to provide a specific pressure breathing air based on the valve type and length of breathing air hose you're using. This pressure is set at the point of attachment, a term used by NIOSH as defined in the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 42. The point of attachment includes a regulator, a pressure relief valve, and a pressure gauge, the gauge used to set the pressure for your air supplied to the respirator. The pressure you need is shown in the two NIOSH-approved tables sewn to the inside of the cape. Use these tables to determine the proper operating pressure of your Apollo respirator equipped with the valve and hose options mentioned earlier. The top table, Table A, is used for high-pressure Apollo respirators, and the lower table, Table B, is used for the Apollo low-pressure respirators. The left column indicates the length of air hose that runs between the point of attachment and the respirator's air control valve. Air control valves are listed along the top of the table. To determine the proper pressure, locate the length of air hose you're using. Then follow that row to the column listing the air control or air conditioning device you're using with your respirator. This number is the pressure, or PSI, to set at the point of attachment. To meet OSHA standards, air for Clemco HP model respirators must come from air compressors attached to Clemco CPF filters. The point of attachment for these filters includes the regulator, pressure relief valve, and pressure gauge. Low-pressure respirators, also called LP models, use a low-pressure ambient air pump. The pump has an air outlet as the point of attachment. These tables give you a guide for sufficient airflow to the operator. NIOSH specifies these air volumes during the respirator approval process. Remember, too much or too little air volume can be hazardous. OSHA regulations require you to keep your respirator clean. In fact, the respirator should be cleaned after each extended use. You can wash the cape, collar, and pads with mild soap and water, adding a quarter cup of chlorine liquid bleach per gallon of water if needed. You can also wipe down the helmet with this same soap, water, and bleach solution. After washing and thoroughly drying the helmet and pads, store the assembled helmet in your locker or in a sealed plastic bag like the one that came in the box. Never leave the respirator uncovered, particularly in dusty or contaminated areas, such as inside a blast room or in any area where abrasive blasting has been done. Contaminants can get into the helmet if you leave it uncovered or hang it in areas where airborne dust is present. Also, never leave the helmet on the ground. Always bag, seal, and store your Apollo respirator in a cool, clean, and dry place. When you need to put it on again, you'll be glad you kept it clean. Another OSHA rule to know is that all supplied air respirators, like the Apollo series, are for job areas where the atmosphere is not immediately dangerous to life and health. That means areas where, if necessary, in an emergency, you could remove the respirator once blasting has stopped and escape. OSHA stipulates you breathe air with a minimum air quality. The major requirement for this air quality is the breathing air must meet what the Compressed Gas Association defines as Grade D air. This requirement may be found in the Compressed Gas Association pamphlet G-7.1. OSHA requires that the Grade D air from a compressor be treated with a filter, also called a sorbent bed, to remove objectionable odors, oils, and mist. The Clemco CPF filter meets the OSHA requirement for the sorbent bed filter. This filter has a cartridge inside, which you replace every 3 months or sooner if your breathing air develops a bad odor or taste. Now let's talk about carbon monoxide. It's true that OSHA has very limited exemptions relating to the requirement for a carbon monoxide monitor alarm, but Clemco strongly encourages using carbon monoxide alarms that conform to OSHA standards. A CO monitor protects users, like you, from deadly CO poisoning. Because an air compressor draws in air from wherever it's located, even a properly maintained, properly operating compressor is capable of sending carbon monoxide contaminated air to the respirator. This can happen when an idling vehicle parks next to the compressor. It's that simple, and let me emphasize that the CPF does not remove CO. Clemco offers carbon monoxide alarms, and again, strongly encourages our customers to use them whenever a supplied air respirator is worn. To make it easy for you and your employer to guard your safety, we've created a safety checklist specific to the respirator you've purchased. This checklist can be used for inspection and audit purposes and to record information about the job hazards you'll encounter. Up to this point, we've discussed safety as it relates to the breathing air itself. But before you start abrasive blasting, make sure you know the hazards associated with the abrasive material you're using, as well as the surface you're blasting. Use our checklist to record user training, respirator fit tests, and as a respirator inspection and audit record. For additional copies, go to our website and click on the Safety tab. For your convenience, the checklist includes replacement parts for easy reordering. I hope this video and our written materials will prepare you to get the most out of your Apollo respirator. Follow these guidelines and you'll receive the best protection this equipment can provide. Be sure you and your employer follow all safe practices mandated by OSHA standards. One last time, let me tell you that these OSHA regulations include, but are certainly not limited to, your right to know, the personal protective equipment you should wear, any fall prevention devices you need, confined space protection, as well as all hearing, face, head, and respiratory protection equipment dictated by the job. Oh, and did I mention that you need to always repair your helmet with genuine NIOSH-approved parts? These regulations are written for your safety. Thanks for purchasing a Clemco Apollo supplied air respirator. Wear it with your own safety in mind.